Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the lifts that I think are the most important and where most of the focus should be for someone who is trying to build a strength base. And when I say a strength base, I don't mean someone who's just trying to get as big as possible, because if you want to get as big as possible, you obviously need more than 3 exercises. And I'm not even talking about someone who's going to go compete in powerlifting, because if you're going to compete in powerlifting, you have to focus on the bench press, right? You have to focus on the bench press. It's one reason I focus so much on the bench press right now. It's my weakest link for me as a powerlifter, and I will compete in powerlifting again. All right, I've done it since being on YouTube more than once. Earned an invite to Worlds and the WPC since being on YouTube. But my bench press is a weak link, so I put a lot of focus on the bench press, even though I treat the standing press as a very, very important primary lift. But if I wasn't competing in a sport that required me to bench press, and it wasn't such a glamorized exercise on YouTube where I happen to make my living, I might not put that much focus in the bench press. I probably wouldn't put the amount of focus I put into it. I really wouldn't. I'm not saying I wouldn't do anything towards it, but it certainly wouldn't have the focus that I have, and I could probably just as easily build my chest off of dips, right? I like dips. I really like dips. I like them a lot. But that aside, if someone really wanted to build a strength base, and I'm talking about someone who just says, hey, I just want to get really strong. I want to get fit. I want to get better just at starting sports. You know, if someone is starting out in high school and they want to start playing sports. Or you even have someone who just says, hey, I want to get stronger for my overall fitness. To me, the foundational lifts would be squatting, deadlifting, and overhead pressing. Now, does that mean a minimalist program where you just do those 3 lifts and never do any variations? Of course not. Of course not. Because how do you build a squat? How do you build a deadlift? How do you build a strong standing press? Well, by doing those lifts. I mean, that's obviously number one, that's specificity of training. But there's a lot of supplemental lifts and variations of those lifts that you use. Like a lot of what I use is variations. You guys don't even see me doing that much conventional deadlifting these days. I do more deficit deadlifts, 3 different forms of deficits, like right here in this video. All right, I do sumo deadlifts. I do more sumo volume than anything, even though I care very much about my conventional. Now, the strict standing press, I do that. I do a lot of that. But could an overhead pressing also include push pressing? Of course it could. But I would say for the majority of people, if you are trying to get legitimately strong, those 3 basic movement patterns, or close proxies to those movement patterns, because we don't have to be dogmatic about it. All right. If I say the squat, does that mean just a normal back squat with a barbell? Like I'm doing there, a high bar squat? No, it could be a box squat. Hell, it could even be a safety bar squat. Right? It doesn't have to be that exact variation, but I can tell you right now, you're going to build a hell of a lot of mileage off just the basic high bar squat. Right? Like I'm doing there. That's going to give you a lot of mileage for strength. You know, but as far as deadlifts go, it could be any close hip hinge variation. So the question becomes why those movements? Well, those are the most important overall movements for developing top to bottom strength, right? Because it's one thing to say, hey, I have a strong bench press, right? I have a strong bench press, and it's another thing to say, hey, I'm strong, right? Those are 2 totally separate things, aren't they? And when we think of overall strength, we think of being able to utilize your whole body as one. Think of being able to use your whole body as one. And let's be realistic here. If you have a base, if you have a decent base built at those 3 lifts, isn't that going to carry over to pretty much anything else you choose to do? Meaning you have a body that's relatively strong top to bottom. So let's say you actually have a really good deadlift, really good squat, a really good press. And let's say you haven't even trained any other movement patterns. And I wouldn't recommend that you do that. Aren't you going to be pretty strong? Are you going to be able to pick up anything else that you do fairly easily? Yeah, probably so. Meaning a person who's never performed a bench press in their life, just using that as an example, but who can do a strict standing press with over 200 pounds, and they start bench pressing, Aren't they, within a relatively short period of time, going to have a pretty good bench? Same with those other movements. Aren't they going to carry over to other things that you want to do? Right? They'll carry over pretty easily. Because again, you're going to be strong top to bottom. And if you have a good base built at those, and you go pick up any athletic endeavor, are you probably going to have enough of a strength base to start off decently at any other endeavor you happen to choose? Meaning, if you've built a pretty solid base on those and you decide you want to go pick up football or baseball or tennis or golf, or you even want to get into boxing or MMA or anything else, and if you have done no other physical activity, not that I would recommend that, if you've done no other physical activity other than build a base at those three big basic standing movement patterns, are you going to have enough of a strength base that you could pick up the performance you need for other stuff? Right? You're going to have the work capacity to build your cardio pretty quick. Because I can tell you right now, someone who isn't overly fat, who can squat at least 400 pounds, the grown man who can squat at least 400, or a grown woman who can squat over 200, they have pretty good work capacity in their legs. If they pick up any sort of endurance work, they're going to get good at it relatively quickly. Meaning, even if you've done no cardio and then you decide to become a marathon runner at that point, it's not going to take you a very long time to become one, because you have a really strong work capacity in your lower body between all the squatting and the hip hinging. Right? Your lower body is going to be pretty strong, pretty well developed. Humans build cardio much, much quicker than we develop strength. You're already going to have the strength base, and that's going to carry over. And because you've gotten strong pretty much top to bottom, you're going to be able to learn a golf swing pretty quick. You're going to be able to learn how to swing a baseball bat pretty quick. You're going to be able to pick up other endeavors relatively quickly if you've built a base on those three movement patterns. Right? And so to me, I consider those to be the foundational movements, the most important movements for human performance. Now, I wouldn't necessarily build a strength sport around them. There is one, it's called strength lifting. And I think that's a great idea for a sport. And you do see even coaches over in that area, over in starting strength, they point out that they really like to focus on those three lifts. They consider them to be very important. And I happen to agree with that. And I really think that for most people, that's where I would put their focus. If I were to start coaching someone who just wanted to get into shape, and they did not say, hey, I'm trying to get as jacked as possible, but they are trying to get strong as possible, that's definitely the three movements I would start them on. That and plenty of conditioning work and general physical preparedness. Right? That's usually what we would do. I mean, in an ideal world, let's say you guys were given a bunch of middle-aged people, right? Out of shape, they need to get into shape, and you're given a whole group of them to train. That's the three movement patterns you'd want to train them in. That and this general physical preparedness. Right? You teach them all to squat, teach them all how to deadlift, teach them all how to press. Drill those movement patterns in. And just lots of general physical preparedness on top of that. And the average person would get in shape pretty quick. It's not to say they couldn't do other stuff, but I'd say that's the focus. That's your strength base. Same thing. You're given a group of 15-year-old kids and said, hey, we're going to start putting all of them out on a football field. We're going to put them out playing baseball, football, rugby, whatever you're going to go put them into, a field sport coming up, and they're completely out of shape. They need a strength base. Of course, that's the first three lifts you would have them do. In their first month in the gym, of course you would. You build their base off of that. Those are your foundational exercises, all right? Now, it's not to say I wouldn't start throwing other stuff in on them pretty quick. Lower back work, ab work, glute ham raises, all right? Field athletes. But you'd start them on those three lifts. That'll be their most important movement patterns. Why? Because you're going to get the most mileage. You're going to build the most strength on them from top to bottom. That's the place to start. And for me, I judge a person's strength based upon those three lifts more than anything else. I'm not saying bench press doesn't matter, for example. I'm not saying even the weighted chin-up doesn't matter. I'm a big fan of weighted chins. I think it's one of the greatest exercises ever. In fact, it's its own strength sport now. They're chin-up contests. weighted chin-up contests. But when we think of strength, of how strong is that person, like how much weight can they pick up and press over their head? How much weight can they deadlift off the floor? How much weight can they squat up on top of their back? That's really how I personally, as someone who's been around many, many lifters in my life, that's how I would determine how strong someone is. I think that's a real good measure of it, of just their overall strength through their entire body. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.